something like 80% of people want to write a book, only 3% do. And I
Yeah.
think that the biggest mistake that people make is that they think that a book has to come at the end of their life, like once they've become the foremost expert, and that they have to kitchen sink everything they know into this masterpiece of a book. And that is the completely wrong way to look at being an author.
And we're live! Woohoo! And this week, we have the amazing Jen Ruiz, who is Jen on the jet plane, who is I put you down as travel expert, even though you could be a travel influencer. You're an author of quite a few successful books. So, if an alien came down from the sky and you were the first person in the world they talked to, how would you describe yourself in the most important way possible?
That would definitely be interesting luck on their part. I'm like, you have no idea what you just got yourself into. I'd probably make myself ambassador between the aliens and the people and, and start a whole thing. I think if I were to introduce myself, I'm a lawyer turned full-time travel blogger, author at Jen on a Jet Plane. I work to inspire females to travel solo around the world and to promote brands and destinations in the travel and tourism space.
Okay. So you used to be a lawyer and you wrote I think your most recent book is, I've got 12 trips in 12 months, something along those lines. Yeah. So you used to be a lawyer and then you ended up challenging yourself to do all of these journeys while you're still a lawyer. And that's how you became a traveler. So talk a little bit about that transition. I mean, was it a case that you were at a point in your legal career where you were looking for something else? Or was it the fact that you found travel and then that's what made you change from being a lawyer to a kind of travel expert?
I did crave having a creative outlet when I started doing legal writing, because legal writing can be very monotone, it can be very just formulaic and very just hard to read and be lost in all day. So I wanted something fun. I wanted to write because I enjoyed writing. And that's when I started a blog. And I started that while I was working full-time as an attorney, just kind of dedicating whatever spare time I had to doing this as a passion project, not knowing where it would lead. And I rebranded twice. Initially, it was 20schic.com, which was, I'm in my 20s. I'm trying to, make this fabulous life happen. I realized that doesn't grow with you. It could have been a good website if I had like kind of anthologized it, and if I'd had people that were coming in and writing about their 20s and contributing to that. And I think that could have had a life of its own, in retrospect, as you think about these things. But that wasn't my focus. I knew I wanted to, have a personal blog, and I knew that I wanted to have something more experiential as I was enjoying it. Implementing a little bit more travel into my life incrementally. Because I was an attorney, I didn't have a lot of time off. And originally I was at a private firm. And so when I transitioned to legal aid, which was a nonprofit, I had the gift of holidays. I had all these federal holidays. I had 10 days PTO. And suddenly it felt like I had a lot of time, because for years I really didn't have any of that. And it was frowned upon to take any time that you did have. So that was the big switch that allowed me to take that challenge when I was in that position. And I think I knew that was something that I wanted to prioritize more. I found myself more excited for the things that I was doing in my off hours, even when I was tired, and pouring myself into those projects more so than the job that I had, presumably studied so long to get. This was it, right? This was me having arrived, and I didn't actually enjoy or look forward to any of it.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to slightly jump forward, because I interviewed you on my Book Chat live show and we talked about your favourite books, and we talked about a lot of this before. But you are somebody who is paid to travel. And I know that the common person in the public probably thinks that you're some sort of influencer person and you just wander around in a bikini all the time and take photos and look nice. But I know from following you on social media that you are very methodical about working with brands and people to help them promote their destinations or anything. So Can you talk a little bit about how you started to develop that? For example, I saw on, like, I think it was Threads, you post a lot about Grand Rapids and you clearly work with the tourism people there. How did you first work out how that process worked? And, like, what do these people expect from you? And, I mean, it's not like you just go there and look pretty and then say, oh yeah, you're actually doing proper work. So talk a little bit about, like, how you started to work that whole thing out, and how you got to this position where people are paying you to go to their place and take photos and post about it.
Yes. So this is destination marketing, and a destination, I just like to understand things from all points of view of everybody that's involved in this tourism pie. So as a destination, their goal is to market and let people know that they exist and bring in more tourism dollars for the local economy. So that is their goal. And in doing so, traditionally, they would have marketed through maybe TV commercials, magazine ad placements, things like that. But the landscape, the media landscape is changing. And so I also have the experience from the journalism side, which is how I got started with all of this just as a freelance writer. And I know from the journalism side that there has been a shift, even Nat Geo, that has been considered this legacy, the ultimate travel publication, they've shut down their print magazine and they've moved towards digital first coverage. Airline magazines, that used to be in the back of every seat, they don't exist anymore. And so we've seen this massive shift in advertising from print media and even broadcast media. I mean, a lot of people still watch television, and I think that there is still room for it. And, the alternative version of how does YouTube compare to television as well, plus all the streaming channels, that's a whole other discussion. I think there is still definitely a lot of broadcasting happening. It just depends on where the eyes are. But when it comes to print media, that has changed. And a lot of people have gone digital first. A lot of outlets have gone digital first, and a lot of these brands have noticed the value in going digital first because it's different. If you have a digital campaign, if I had paid for an ad in a, back of airline seat magazine before, I'm paying for the potential eyes to that magazine. I'm paying for how many seats it's going to be in versus how many flights a day, things like that. But I can't track who opened it, who read this article, who clicked through and bought something because they saw this. And with a digital ad, you can do all of that. And you can say, this is exactly where the people were located. This is the action that they took as a result of this video. This is how long they watched through or how far they read through in the article. You get so much more data that as a marketer, data is, information is power. And so it's become the more appealing place to put your money because you see a stronger ROI and just more information in terms of who it is that's getting this data and where your paid marketing content is reaching. And so I think that that's why we're seeing brands make that move. Now, brands have still traditionally opted for placement, and they pay the PR agencies to get them into magazines, TV, things of the sort. But now with influencers driving as much traffic, having as much viewership as a lot of these magazines and, TV outlets do, they have hundreds of thousands, millions of followers in the same way that these outlets would. And they can sometimes even drive a stronger ROI. You've seen these influencers that are selling out restaurants, that are making things go viral, and suddenly you can't buy them anymore. So there is that. Now, I think a smart marketing approach is the 360 approach, right? So you do want to target the traditional media. You do still want to have, the prestige of being associated with Nat Geo. I don't think that's going anywhere anytime soon, but maybe you also have something that's moving the ball for you, selling out cruises, selling out tours, selling out your hotels, particularly these, social media accommodations that go viral and are, people want to stay here. They'll book out places for years. I stayed at Giraffe Manor in Kenya, and I paid a ridiculous amount of money to do so because I was influenced. I saw it on social media, and I made it a point to go across the world to have this experience. And so I think that it's very powerful. It's how we make decisions nowadays. It's how we purchase things. We purchase things online. We look for peer reviews. Nobody has purchased anything the last couple of years without clicking to read the reviews online. You haven't, because
Yeah.
you just want to see what do other people have to say about it. So there is that room for this influencer marketing, this more, I can relate to you versus this super perfect commercial ad that maybe you feel isn't giving you all the information that you need to make an informed consumer decision.
Okay. Well, let's say I live in South Woodford it's a little bit of northeast London. There isn't a South Woodford tourist board, but let's say there were, and they approached you and said, like, we want you to come to South Woodford and help promote. What sort of conversation would you have with them? And then what sort of thing would you be offering them? Because I think you're a lot more formalized, because I think the whole influencer world is moving away from just people with a very big following but don't really know what they're doing to people who are much more intentional about what they do. So what would the conversation be like, and like how would that work?
The first thing I would want to know is what their marketing priorities are.
Yeah.
Because again, as an organization, maybe you've just launched a new initiative, a new kind of theme or logo. Maybe you're trying to push, pet friendly stays, or you want to drive up family visits. I don't know. So I would want to know, what are your marketing priorities? Do you have any new campaigns? Do you have any demographics that you're looking to target, over the next year or so? And usually they might tell me, we just launched this new food trail. We have this, we want to really kick up our, we do really great in summer. We want to kick up our winter tourism. Like, I don't know what they might say, but that's where it helps to have that conversation and talk directly to the representative. Then from there, based off of their marketing priorities, I get an idea of what their budget is. Do you have budget? Do you work with influencers and bloggers? How do you work with them? Because maybe they host them individually. Maybe you do press trips. Maybe you send materials and they, just include it in their existing materials. People work with things in lots of different ways. So the next thing I'd want to ask is how you work with them and get an idea of what a successful campaign looks like for them. And then based off of all this information, I can put together a marketing proposal, ideally within the budget that they've stated, that has, about 3 different packages at different price ranges, including things that they've told me that they're interested in. Because not everybody's interested in social media. Maybe some people are interested in blog posts. Maybe some people want to grow their Pinterest. Maybe some people want you to send out emails. Maybe some people want you to include an affiliate link. So I don't know what your, again, what their priorities are and what their goals are. But once I do know that from the conversation, I can include that in my marketing package to tailor that package to what it is that they're hoping to get from this partnership.
Okay. And I suppose this is a more personal question to you, but like, because you work in travel, and is it a case that you approach places you want to go and say, can I work with you? Or is it more a case of you see which people are offering things and that's where you decide where you're going to go? Or is it a mix? Is it like you don't want to go to Scranton or something? I don't know, what terrible place in the US. You might not want to go to Flint, Michigan or somewhere like that. I don't know. How does it work? Or is it just a case of you weigh up the relative, like where you want to go versus like who you want to work with and that kind of thing? How does it work for you personally?
I make a lot of my brand contacts face to face at conferences. I think that there's still a lot to be said for human connection in this industry, particularly when we are so, screen driven, and when it is so saturated, when you can have hundreds of people in your inbox that you have no personal connection to as a brand rep that's receiving pitches. So I think that for me, it helps to have those connections, to really be a part of the community and to be active at different conferences throughout the year. I'm usually attending and speaking at like 3 or 4 every year. And then from there, I do also occasionally pitch brands if there's a brand that I'm interested in, if there's, a contact that I've come across, if somebody's referred me, if I've seen a new campaign that interests me, that could be something where I reach out. And then sometimes I have incoming requests as well, unexpected, just because I've had a video that did well. So somebody else saw that and then they're reaching out to me about working together.
Okay. So where's the most exciting place that you've been paid to go to? And I suppose, well, I'll ask you that question first, and then I'll ask the wider question about like where's the most exciting place you've been to in the world, just generally.
Well, some of these recent trips that I've had have been really exciting. I'm just thinking, what have I done, this year? I just came, I was in Yosemite National Park.
Yeah.
That was really beautiful. And I thought that was lovely to see the full-grown sequoia trees, and just see how beautiful nature is. I think national parks are always a good place to be. But it's odd because I feel like I always end up discovering more to a destination when I go there. So even if before partnership I wasn't sure what there was to offer, I'm usually in awe of what I find when I get there. So even sticking with the Grand Rapids
Yeah.
example, which was my last campaign here at the end of July, I loved it. And that was actually my second visit. So I thought I already, knew Grand Rapids pretty well. And there were still new things I discovered. I went to the Blueberry Festival. I tried blueberry pizza, and I've tried, it was really just a fun summer activity. I did a street art tour, and I saw these really beautiful murals, and they have a big art festival happening right now. So, there's always seasonal events, new things. And that's why I'm always hesitant to say that, any place isn't worth visiting, because I feel like there are stories to tell, and there are people, wanting to share their life's passion and work in all of these places. So, and that's the gift of being a travel writer, is that you get to really have that served up to you on this platter, where the tourism board has found the stories, and, these people are waiting to meet with you. And it's always such an honor.
Okay. So, I'll ask you later on about travel more generally, but so what kind of, when you go to there, are you interviewing people? Is it about taking videos? What kind of things do you typically provide people as part of your services as a travel expert?
Yeah, and that'll depend again on what their focus is, right? So if I know that they want photos, particularly to use in their brochures, maybe they want me in it, then I'll spend more time setting up and taking photo shoots while I'm there. If I know that they want more short form videos, then I won't necessarily be taking a lot of videos of me, but I'll be taking a lot of videos of everything that's happening. So I can compile that and really market that. And I'll be thinking of an angle. Like I had a video that did really well because it had a cheese pull that was like basically like 2 feet as the opening frame.
Yeah.
And so when those things are happening, I'm thinking, and like, what's going to be the opening thing for this video? What are some good angles? Always stuff that I have top of mind. If they want blog posts, I'm looking to take, detailed notes, information, dates, what time do things close and open, all of that stuff, because I want to really have an informative blog post. So it depends. And usually it's a mix of all things. And I'm usually the one woman band, right? So I'm interviewing, I'm taking notes, I'm recording, I'm taking pictures, I'm in the pictures, so all the things.
Okay. So are you quite sort of competent at taking pictures now? Have you got like all the equipment or do you outsource it to somebody locally to take pictures of you? How does that work?
I can handle my own, and I do have a DSLR that I bought for taking pictures originally when I started, for some photo tours where you needed to have a DSLR.
Yeah.
But I'm going to be honest, I feel like with how far iPhones have come, because it is more of a hassle for me to travel with it, it can be onerous, especially because I'm a solo traveler. So it can feel like it's not necessarily like setting me up for success, sometimes making me a target. I had my camera with me on safari in Kenya, and I appreciated having it for some of the more far away shots and things like that. So, and in that moment I had the van, so I can always just put the stuff in the van. We're driving around, like I'm not carrying it necessarily. So I think it depends on the situation. Something like night tourism, night sky tourism is still really difficult for me to capture because that's a whole other skill. And so I do have friends that specialize in that. For that, I would probably bring in a professional. But if it's something where I have good lighting and, it's me, I can usually set up and do my own shoot. I've gotten pretty proficient at setting up a tripod, finding a good quiet spot, being able to take multiple pictures until you get the right one, editing the photos, things like that.
Okay. So you've written quite a few books, as we talked about on Book Chat Live, where people want to buy, but most of them, they've started off with being fairly kind of instructional about things, about solo travel, to the point where your last book was more autobiographical even. Talk to us a little bit about that process because I think you self-published books, but your most recent book is traditionally published. Talk to us a little bit about that process of writing all those books.
Absolutely. Yeah. So Something like 80% of people want to write a book, only 3% do. And I
Yeah.
think that the biggest mistake that people make is that they think that a book has to come at the end of their life, like once they've become the foremost expert, and that they have to kitchen sink everything they know into this masterpiece of a book. And that is the completely wrong way to look at being an author. You should start writing earlier, sooner rather than later, understanding that it's probably not going to be your first book that's your biggest hit ever. And that if you're doing this right, you're making a ton of books and you're continuing to write. So you're not, even if we're in just the informational versus like the world building, fiction, you shouldn't be kitchen sinking it. You shouldn't, like my first book wasn't everything about affordable travel. It was the affordable flight guide. So I don't have to deal about affordable rental cars, affordable food, affordable hotels, just affordable flights. And if I wanted to, I can have a whole affordable series and break down and do one book for each of those other things. But I think the more books that you have, the more that your books sell themselves, the more kind of feelers that you have out into the world, and the chance that somebody picks up one of those books and gets, tied back into the web of all the rest of your content. So that's why authors do well once they reach a certain threshold of books that they've written. That's why authors like Stephen King and Nora Roberts are so prolific, right? Because they're just cranking out more books. And so I think that's the mindset you need to have. Not this one book is going to be everything for me, but rather this author career is going to be something I am pursuing for a long time. And I think once you have that mindset, then it's only a matter of time before you find success in literally almost any genre. I've known people that have found great success in many different ways. So you have self-publishing, which is when you do everything yourself, very minimal investment. It can be as little or as much as you want it to be, but you're hiring the editor, the book cover designer, or you're doing it yourself. And you are publishing it, online through Amazon, through Ingram Spark, through all these other channels. And you get the majority of the sales as a result. The other option is to be traditionally published, which is what people have done up until now, which has been difficult, right? Because there's a series of hoops that you have to jump through before you get there. So whereas with self-publishing, you can have a book out within the next 30 days, highly unlikely, impossible that would be the case with traditionally published books. It takes a much longer process. It took me 4 years from pitching to having my book out. And, there's a lot more people involved in that. So you're not the sole decision maker for everything. And you get less royalties because there's a lot of people taking a piece of that pie. But you do get a book advance, you do have a team, so there's pros and cons. And then you have the hybrid publishing model where you're kind of hiring somebody to help take you through the process. So you're actually paying that investment and you're doing like a royalty split, like 40-60 kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I used to, many years ago, I used to run the Begin Self-Publishing podcast. So I know a bit about self-publishing, but yeah, that's very well put. So how did you find the process of being traditionally published as opposed to being a self-publishing? Because obviously there's no upfront cost for you because you're not paying for editing and cover design. But on the other hand, you have to wait for delays. Was that frustrating waiting for people to do stuff? Or was it just you were taking in the experience of being sort of traditionally published?
I enjoyed the experience. I knew that I wanted to shift particularly from self-publishing to traditionally published for the memoir because it was a different type of book. So with the first 5 books, it was just me sharing what I know. I could do that, with my eyes closed. It was just kind of an extension of the content I've already shared regularly on my website and blog. But this was more storytelling. And so I knew I wanted the assistance of a team. I had a lot of editors involved in this process. And then also I knew I wanted wider distribution. I think you can get wide distribution as a self-published author, but I think it's easier when you go with a traditional publishing company because they handle all of that for you. So you don't have to worry about uploading your books and making sure they get out and, they do that. So you get pretty wide distribution already by default of being with that traditional publisher. You still have to do things like maybe call the library, your local library, to see if it's stocked and things like that. But your book is pretty widely available, and that's something that they take care of. So that's an easier way. Plus the advance, plus the team, and film and TV rights was another consideration because they do have somebody that works on that for you, is pitching that, and it's difficult, not impossible. E.L. James and 50 Shades of Grey did it, and they got adapted from being a self-published book to being a major motion picture, but it's not a super common move because
Yeah.
people look to those traditional publishing companies.
Yeah. Well, we had somebody on about a year ago who did it. He was now making films. But I think he
Amazing.
started actually running his own mini film studio now. So, yeah, it can go a little bit excessive. Okay, so now I'm going to ask you the question I tabled earlier. Like, where in the world, paid or otherwise, have you been where you were like, this is the best place I visited? I know this is a terrible question to ask a traveler, but I'm going to ask you.
Yeah, I get asked it a lot, so I have to narrow it down by like type of experience. So most relaxing, most peaceful was the south of France in
Okay.
summer, just with the lavender, the sunflower, the Gorge du Verdon, the chasing, finding the real life places that Van Gogh painted. That was such a joyous trip for me and really just a dream come true. In terms of like spiritual experiences, I loved Angkor Wat. It's the largest, religious complex in the world,
Yeah.
and it's really interesting to see how it's changed from Buddhism to Hinduism, depending on who's ruling, and the sculptures on the walls and the different temples. It's just a really sprawling, cool complex to explore. It's really fun. You're walking through history. In terms of like adventure, I would say definitely going into the volcano in Iceland was a very memorable experience. There's only a few volcanoes that humans can enter, and that's one of them. And so it was really cool to see the magma chamber and how it's formed and all the colors from the fire. And it was just really a once in a lifetime experience. Yeah. And so I can geek out also over a good like theme park, and I can do kind of the more touristy things as well. And so I have so many places that I love. And so depending on the experience, and so many places I still want to see. So top of my list, the salt flats in Bolivia. I'd love to go and do some visual illusions there with, the way that it looks with the depth of field. I'd love to dress up like in a mermaid costume and take a photo shoot in the Philippines. That's a thing. Maybe see whale sharks as well while I'm there. There's a pink fridge that's fully stocked in the desert in Namibia. I'd love to go find that fridge. And so I have a list of things that I still want to do.
So you have your travel bucket list. There's so much I could ask you about, but they say that travel broadens the mind. Do you think that's true? Do you think that traveling the world has expanded your horizons? Because you were quite high-powered lawyer before, but do you think that the traveling the world has made you not broader person? That makes me feel like something but way, but more broad-minded.
I think it's interesting because I don't know who said it. What was it, Einstein or somebody online? That's like, the more you know, the more you realize how little you know.
Yeah.
And so I think it's interesting because the more I travel, the less I feel like I know. And the more I think so I think when I started, especially as an attorney, especially young, you think you know it all. In America, we definitely think we know it all. And I had traveled, a bit, but I think the more I go to countries that people didn't expect me to go to, Qatar, Kazakhstan, these places where a lot of my peers haven't been to. And I realize that there are things that I've been completely unaware of, foods I didn't know of, traditions, ways of life. I just really feel, yes, I'm expanding, but at the same time, I feel like I've been diminished in terms of what I feel that I do know. My understanding of what I know has definitely shrunken, and I feel like I just know a little bit, and I just feel so much more to really experience and figure out. But I'm grateful. I'm really grateful for those tidbits and having that Rolodex of knowledge, so that when I do find myself using it quite often. So whenever I meet someone, I try to find something in my Rolodex of knowledge and experiences that I can connect with them with, even if they're from somewhere around the world. And that is, I think, the best part of it is that I keep having, a more robust Rolodex, and I can really pull out these random connections with people who are surprised that I know what, those things are. Yeah.
Okay. We had a solo travel expert on not long ago, but I'm going to let you very briefly, because you've got huge experience. Because you work and you do all this stuff on your own. What are your sort of top five tips as a solo traveler, especially a female solo traveler? Because I know there are differences there.
Yeah. Number one, take a backup battery with you everywhere.
Yeah.
I use the Anchor battery because it recharges my phone 3 times from 0 to 100. And I think that, again, a lot of people like to look at this like a vanity thing. Oh, she just wants to take selfies. No, your phone is first safety first and foremost. People are tracking you on your phone. My mom's always tracking my location. I use it for directions. I use it for Googling. What are the hours? Where am I going? What are the directions for the train? Like, it is your full resource. And so if that dies, like, now what? Like, it does get really scary and a lot harder to navigate. I just had that instance in Vienna, and I am a very experienced solo traveler, and the connection wasn't working, and I'm stranded in this location that was the wrong location. It's not where I'm supposed to be, and like, I can't connect anywhere. And like, I know what my game plan is, but I need there to be service, and I need this phone to be working for me to be able to get the taxi to come and pick me up from here, like, and for me to be able to know where it is that I'm going and the direction I'm going to give the taxi. Like, so I need this to always work. It's within arm's reach of me at any point in time. That's how important it's really become to us nowadays. So always have a charger, never let your phone die. You can use your phone for things. My second tip would be use it to translate menus. Like in Japan, if you use Google Lens, because they do not have English menus and you have no idea what you're ordering sometimes. So, better safe than sorry. And so use that to just translate anything that you're looking at, and it'll translate it on your screen right then and there. The third thing, it is really disappointing for me to lose pictures. I think pictures, again, something that people look at as frivolous, but ultimately it's our memories. Ultimately, it's like the most precious thing that you have, and like what everybody is holding on to at the end of life. Like, memories are everything. And so I want to make sure that your pictures are being backed up somehow, somewhere, so that you don't lose that, even if, something happens to your phone. Next, AirTag your luggage. I think that's really important, because you don't know where your luggage is going. And as much, again, as everybody's like, oh, why didn't you go carry on only? Because it's not always feasible. And in Europe, your baggage restrictions, and in the UK, are even smaller than the US. They are so, so tiny, these carry-ons. And you can't have, the expander open or anything. It has to be the compressed, really tiny bag, and nothing fits there. So likely you have to check a bag, and it's just good if you know where it is, if if anything happens to it, it helps you with filing a claim, all of that. So having that AirTag, I think, is a great tracking method that we didn't have before. And I would say my last tip, I always bring an extra bag, like an extra foldable tote bag or something like that. So if I do run out of space, I can just I can check my roller bag, and I can take the tote bag on board, like as a carry-on, and I have extra space for things like souvenirs, things I buy. You never know how things are going to go. But I don't like to be restricted. Like, no, I can't buy this super amazing handcrafted thing because it doesn't fit in my suitcase. Like, we're going to make it work.
Yeah, I was looking down, because until very recently, I actually went on the trip and took it. I did have my power charger down here, but I've moved it since. I was going to hold up power block. Yeah, something you can actually, on Google Maps, you can do offline. You can load the maps offline, so that But I don't know about you, but often when I go to a new location, I really struggle with direction. Because you might know that you're on here on the map, but then you look and like, which street is which street?
Yes.
So it's still nice to have an active connection, because you get all the direction stuff there.
Absolutely.
The other thing is, like, I've got a little folding rucksack thing that I found I saw online recommended. That works really good as an extra bag, because you can take it out, because it's actually funny, even if you've got like your carry-on bag and then your personal item, which seems to turn into a rucksack depending on where you're going, you don't necessarily want to take this personal item with you. It's nice to have another rucksack to take out. Just not on the, because I always tend to go carry on everywhere, so it's not like I'm going to take it back, even though I suppose I could check in and take that as another bag. So those are great tips. Thanks for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so we could talk for a long time, because I'm obviously interested in travel too. But you've got so many places that people can contact you, and so many books. So I'm going to give you a little time to talk about all the books that you've got available, and then talk about all your blogs and things. And then finally, if people want to get in touch with you, or they want to talk to you about travel, or maybe they are from like the Tahiti Tourist Board, or somebody really nice who wants to get in touch with you and pay you £1 million to wander around Tahiti taking photos. So just tell everybody how they can get in touch with you and find out about everything you do.
First off, Tahiti, hit me up because I would definitely be interested in that arrangement.
Yeah.
But you can find me, my latest book, 12 Trips in 12 Months. You can find it at 12tripsin12months.com, wherever books are sold, currently in Hudson Airport bookstores. And then you can find me at Jen on a Jet Plane, like leaving on a jet plane. Jen has one N. And you can go to my blog, jenonajetplane.com, to find travel guides, tips, articles. And then you can also follow me on social. I'm on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, Threads, TikTok, LinkedIn. I'm everywhere. So you can find me at Jen on a Jet Plane. YouTube. YouTube's the newest one that I've started posting on. And yeah, and I'm happy to connect. And hopefully my first 5 books, if you're somebody who wants more of how to travel, the first 3 books are The Affordable Flight Guide, so how to save money on flights. The second is You Need a Vacation, so how to travel more with a full-time job. And the third is the Solo Female Travel Book, so how to travel alone as a female. And then the other 2 are about working remotely so that you have a chance to travel and make this your job. So the first one is 25 Ways to Work from Home, that talks about different income streams that you can have. And the 5th one, the last self-published book, is From Blog to Business, that talks about how you can monetize your website and turn that into a brand.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for being the guest, and thanks for everybody who's been watching live. Thanks for everybody who's going to watch in the future, and I might as well thank you again. Thanks so much for being a guest, Jen. It's been great to have you on the show, and thanks everybody for watching. Goodbye.
This is what God requires.